Lent is the church's time to hit a spiritual reset button. It helps us look at our lives and our walks with God and evaluate how those things are working and what we can do to bring us a little bit closer to God. All that is in the way is all these burdens of the world that we carry around, like Carter showed us. The news of coronavirus outbreaks, healthcare struggles, immigration policies, and ICE detainments. The significance of Lent can get a little lost. We get caught up in news cycles and personal struggles, so we put off looking at our own lives. There's so many things that can distract us from God. The devil even tried to distract Jesus. He went with 3 techniques: comfort from his hunger, identity, his reputation of being a child of God, and power, the ability to rule the world. Comfort, identity, and power are common distractions for many of us. These distractions get so big in our lives that we can lose sight of the larger picture and get left with a kaleidoscope of tiny pieces that look pretty, but would run us into poles and drop us into sewer grates if we can't see around the sparkling colors. We have to find ways to drop our distractions, to lay our burdens down, to fully see God at work in our lives and the world around us.
But if I lay down my burdens, what would I carry then? My hands might be open and my shoulders might drop and release, but I would be emptier. I would be freed, but freed to do what? To be what? If I laid down my burdens and got out from behind the distractions that I do spend most of my time and energy on, I'm not so sure what I would do with myself or even what I would think about. The potential emptiness frightens me, if I'm honest. I prefer my mind, my plate, my calendar to be full. It's how I keep myself in check. I'm not more important than others. I know that. I'm not the end-all and be-all. I know that too. So I don't want to overly think about myself. I've gotten quite comfortable thinking very little about myself, in fact, not to mention thinking about my soul. I just keep my mind on what's next. What's next? My focus is always that next thing. And those things aren't necessarily bad by design or content. I've got to do them. Clean the apartment, check the homework, cook the meal, return that email, purchase some pants that fit, go to the march, send the text, swing by the pharmacy, type up those minutes, place that order, make the doctor's appointment and the other doctor's appointment, draft that letter. These things have to be done. That's life, right? They are life, right? They take up space, yeah, it's true, but they also do give me some purpose. If you take those things away, what am I left with? And what do I matter if not for the things that I do, the tasks I complete, the part that I play in the life of my office and church, my neighborhood and my family? I don't have time when all is said and done to think about what I matter to myself, and not any time left over from that to consider my worth to God. If I'm not holding tightly to my use, my competency, my routine, my blessed distractions, what would I hold on to? And then what would hold me?
Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the child of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But Jesus answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God."
Jesus left what could have been a life of normalcy and relative ease and went into the wilderness, led by the Spirit. He gathered up all the expectations he and others had for his life, and he dropped them as he entered the wilderness. He let go and he laid down his comforts. He fasted, accepting hunger during his time of preparation for what was ahead. This Lent, I don't want to live in a comfort that keeps me oblivious. Like Jesus, I want to be ready to gather everything up and let it all go, choosing instead to walk through the wilderness, trusting that the one whose path I'm following will give me the strength I need to get through it all. I want to deny the distractions and embrace some discomfort for the opportunity to become closer to God, nearer to God. Maybe that means that I'll be less close and less comfortable with the things that have given me comfort in the past, like the competitiveness that drives me to be my best, that tells me if I'm not first, I might as well not try at all, and that I'm not worthy of anything. The competitiveness that made me cry in college when I got third place instead of first, or that makes me quit things early on because I'd rather not do it at all than do it poorly. There's the comfort of turning away from relationships and situations when they get difficult, so I don't have to have uncomfortable conversations. It's far more comfortable to just cut off a relationship than work through problems. It's easier if I turn my emotions off and don't feel anything else for the person. And then there's the comfort of privilege that allows me to ignore the pain of others, that allows their pain to be something I can choose to experience with them if I want. Or I could just choose to opt out of seeing or feeling it at all. This Lent, I'm ready to lean into the discomfort, to not be distracted by my normal patterns and easy habits. I'm letting go of the need to succeed because I don't feel like I'm good enough otherwise. I'm opening myself up to relationships and situations even when they make me uncomfortable in order to grow. I'm dropping my ignorance and checking my privilege, leaning into the hurt of the world, because that's where we meet God.
But there's a difference, isn't there, between comfort and complacency. Now, I'm not proposing that I zone out in my faith. I don't think we can look at how Jesus lived and convince ourselves that we need to go numb to the weight and the worry of the world. Jesus came to engage this world and get us engaged with it. Complacency to injustice or oppression, to the obstacles of goodness and love, that's not the way of Jesus. Now, I get that. But does the growing that gets me closer to God and others, nearer the heart of love, does that growing have to ache? I don't think feeling bad, feeling the full weight of my failures, convicting myself of where I have been too comfortable in my privilege and power is going to help me draw nearer to God. It just makes me feel awful. And when I feel bad, I turn away from whatever truth has led me to that feeling. I turn away from whatever lesson that discomfort can teach me. So it doesn't work anyway. I'm not convinced that Jesus had to turn away the devil's bread and experience hunger for those 40 days and nights. Couldn't he have prepared for what was ahead with a full stomach? By staying with his friends, near to those people he knew and the places he felt most comfortable and comforted by, Jesus could have stayed connected to the things he knew while also preparing for the things that he didn't. That's what I think. And so can I, right? I don't have to leave what I've made for myself, worked hard to create in the way of a life and routine in order to grow. I don't like loosening my control on things, not knowing how things will go. It's scary, and I feel weak. And I don't really understand why Jesus taught that it was strong to be weak. If the spiritual lessons I need to learn were offered in a way that didn't ask me to step aside from my assuredness, didn't force me to feel so foolish at times, then I think I could learn them quicker. I think I could respond better. But asking me to leave my comfort and predictable living, to better trust God, to open my eyes to where God is working in this world, it isn't something I plan on doing anytime soon. I don't see the point in trying.
Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the child of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, God will command the angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test."
This Lent, I aim to hold the connection to the truth that I am a child of God. If you are the child of God, the devil taunts Jesus. But Jesus doesn't take the bait and talk himself out of being a child of God. Instead, he clings to that identity. I am beloved. I am worthy of being called and claimed. I'm often better at helping other people see this truth than I am at seeing it for myself. It's a lot easier to hear the stories of other people and help them see the ways that they aren't being nourished spiritually or emotionally than it is to take a hard look at my own life and do that work. It's painful, and honestly, it really sucks to evaluate your life and say, these relationships and situations aren't bringing me life. They aren't making me feel like a beloved child of God. They're hurting me. But of course, we aren't just physical beings. Almost everyone, religious or not, agrees that there's something spiritual about us and our world. If we ignore that aspect of our being, we miss a big chunk of life. Because our spiritual life doesn't manifest physically all that often, it's harder to gauge when it needs help. Taking a critical look at all aspects of our lives is a good start. It helps us get a sense of what's going on. And if that isn't difficult enough, after we take that hard look, we've got to start naming and acknowledging the places that are a little bruised or could use some help to grow. You can't really move past a crisis or a pain point if you don't acknowledge that it's there in the first place. This Lent, I'm taking a hard look at myself, at my soul. I'm checking how much my child of God status is affirmed by the people around me in the situations that I'm in. And then I'm working to change what I can or let go of the things that pull me down and don't affirm my worth. I'm prioritizing my spiritual and emotional life and working to grow them closer to God.
But who I am matters to me. It matters. I've had to fight for it. I've overcome obstacles to claim my identity. They said I was a phase. They said I was a sin. Others have tried to erase me. Why would I do that to myself? I hold fast to certain markers of my identity, my queerness, my Southern roots, my faith, my clergy status. These are the parts of myself I sometimes lead with and that I won't let go of, no matter the burden that they may be. They are central to who I am and how I show up in this world. And the roles that I fill also define me and project who I am to the world. Spouse, teacher, mother, activist, friend, board member, sister, neighbor, child, aunt, pastor. These roles represent years of experience, time, energy, heartache, work, boundary making, transgressing, and holding. I'm as familiar with the roles I fill and play as any other part of me. Child of God, though, that identity doesn't need anything from me. It's true, I'm a child of God, but I didn't do anything to get it, and I can't ever do anything to lose it. It's just there, like air. And so it doesn't register as something that needs time or requires energy and thought, learning or unlearning. What does it matter if I'm a child of God anyway? So is everyone else. It holds no reputation, no status, no distinction, no draw. I can neglect it and focus my attention on the parts of myself that I could lose if I didn't fight so hard to keep.
Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to him, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, 'Worship the Lord and serve only God.'" Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him.
Being connected to God gives me power. Jesus was offered the whole world. All he had to do was bow down to the devil. But he wouldn't. He continued to hold that connection to God. That was all the power that he needed. I agree. I am more when I am with God. I am more when I am with community. On my best days, I understand the deep power that we're all able to access through an intentional connection to God. On other days, I think I can do everything by myself. I remember how far I've come, how much work it took to put myself through college, to find space in New York, to fight through jobs that hurt more than they helped me grow. I pretend as if I did all these things by myself, forgetting that God was always walking with me, as were so many mentors, friends, and chosen family along the way. That's power. And that power grows when I expand my faith past myself and onto God. As I look around and see your faces, or my friends from school, or the youth I work with, I remember the places that I see God every day. I remember that God shows up in my life, in the faces around me, and that there has never been a time when I was without God. Even in the midst of pain and uncertainty, God sent people into my life to shine a little light or to sit with me while I cried out. It's so much easier to remember my power, my child status, when I look backwards. My goal, then, is to see the workings of God's power in the moment, to watch for the ways God is showing up for me and giving me strength in the face of the wilderness or the valley of shadows. I'm going to find the people God is working through. I'm seeing the power of God around me and the ways God uses me to connect to others.
But I am only one person. With all that is happening in the world, I feel so small, so utterly insignificant. Any spiritual or personal power I have is totally surpassed by the enormity of need, the vastness of the systems of oppression and corrupted power that we're up against. Who am I up against the stealthy and ingrained force of white supremacy that evolves and adapts quicker than any measure can stamp it out? Who am I up against the growing horror of climate crisis when 99% of scientists and total fact can't convince the world to turn? Who am I up against the staggering violence of our time when a Puerto Rican woman of trans experience can't even go to a bathroom without being targeted and stalked and brutally killed? Who am I to staunch the gun lobby who has somehow convinced folks that there isn't a connection between the deaths of our children in schools by guns and the total lack of gun measures and laws? There is so much wrong. There is so much pain. And it feels like I'm disconnected, totally disconnected from that divine power. I am powerless. I should give up.
No, don't.
I should give in.
You shouldn't.
It feels altogether too hopeless to risk hoping anymore.
That's the devil in distraction. And the devil is only as powerful as you let it be.
I believe that the devil speaks with a very familiar voice, our own. While the opponent of justice, the distractor of faithfulness, and the tempter to doubt is an active agent in the powers and principalities of our time, the way we are most often tricked into disconnectedness, into distraction, regularly comes from within. It would be so much easier, I think, if we could look our devil in the face, standing opposite us on the side of a cliff face. It would be outside of ourselves, identifiable and clear, other. But the great distractor gets in our heads, in our hearts. And if we aren't careful, the devil can convince even us with our own reasoning to keep God at arm's length and to disengage from community and forget the people with whom Jesus stands. After all, we can come up with great arguments to stay comfortable in our power and privilege and circumstance, keeping those systems and structures in place that harm the most vulnerable and benefit the few. We can come up with great arguments to discount our own sacred worth as children of God and neglect to nurture and care for our souls. We can come up with some great arguments to think ourselves powerless, immobilized by the height and the depth of injustice and evil, making it all too easy for both to flourish. But here's the good news. If we can create those false narratives, we can also destroy them. We can stop the argument, the back and forth, the inner negation to draw nearer to God, to goodness and to grace. We can discomfort the distractor, reclaim the source and sustainer who claims us first and always. And we can find power and promise in our God, who never leaves us alone, but attends us with angels, even when we face the devil. Let us lay down that burden of distraction and let us feel God lift us up. Amen.